Hello, this is ArtGainz, and you're watching ArtGainz Live number 3. I have a number of items to go through today, including an article from Archbishop Vigano about the Paris Olympics, an article from Barnhardt about women working in the home, and some tweets and some videos about JD Vance and how he's going to fill the world with children. Still working on this format, this streaming format. Still a work in progress. And I am basically producing for myself, so I have to think about a million things all at the same time. Plus, what's the word? Modulating the way I speak, slowing down the way I speak so that I'm more pleasant to listen to and that sort of thing. And trying to make sure that all my technical stuff is still working. I keep running into this problem where my audio splitter for some reason just up and stops working on me. But hopefully that won't happen to us tonight. And if it does, I'll just have to put on the taking a break screen and restart my system, and then I'll be back within 2 or 3 minutes, I hope. All right, so item the first, statement from Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano following the sacrileges and scandals of the Paris Olympic Games. This is from what I presume is Archbishop Vigano's website, though I'm not really familiar with it. It's called xsurgedomine.it. I should probably mention, in case you don't know who Archbishop Vigano is, I am not that familiar with him, but I do know that he was recently excommunicated by the Pope for, basically pointing out that the Pope is a communist and that sort of thing. So, I'm not entirely certain what the average Catholic thinks about Archbishop Vigano. I know I came across at least one guy on one of the Discord servers I'm on who doesn't like him, but I'm sure this particular fellow would be very opposed to communism. But yeah, so anyway, I from what little I know of him, he seems to be a reasonable fellow, so I'm going to read through this statement of his. The opening ceremony of the Paris Olympic Games is only the latest in a long series of vile attacks on God, the Catholic religion, and natural morality by the antichristic elite that holds Western countries hostage. We had seen no less disconcerting scenes at the 2012 London Olympics, the 2016 inauguration of the Gotthard Tunnel, and the 2022 Commonwealth Games, featuring infernal figures, goats, and terrifying animals. The elite who organizes these ceremonies demand not only the right to blasphemy and the obscene display of the foulest vices, but even their mute acceptance by Catholics and decent people who are forced to suffer the outrage of seeing the most sacred symbols of their faith and the very foundations of the natural law desecrated. We witnessed a dystopian dance macabre in which the holograms of the horsemen of the apocalypse alternated with a plump blue Dionysius served under a bell of various courses. The parody of the LGBTQ+ Last Supper, the truculent performance of a decapitated Marie Antoinette singing Ça ira, called to celebrate the horrors of the French Revolution. The ballets of bearded transvestites and effeminate dancers accompanied by pitiful mime singers. I just like to point out, this is, I presume, translated from Italian, I think, so it's a bit awkward, but maybe it's just me. In this provocative spectacle, Satan knows how to do nothing except ruin God's creative perfection, showing himself as the envious author of every counterfeit. Satan creates nothing. He only ruins everything. He does not invent, he tampers, and his followers are no different. They humiliate women's femininity in order to erase the motherhood that recalls the Virgin Mother. They castrate man's manhood in order to tear him from the image of God's fatherhood. They corrupt the little ones in order to kill innocence in them and make victims of the most abject wokeism. The opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games have given scandal not only because of the arrogant display of the ugly and the obscene, but because of the infernal subversion of good and evil, the insane claim to be able to blaspheme and desecrate everything, even what is most sacred, in the name of an ideology of death, ugliness, and lies that defies Christ and scandalizes those who recognize him as Lord and God. It is no coincidence that the one sponsoring this revolting carnival is an emissary of the World Economic Forum, Emmanuel Macron, who passes off a transvestite as his own wife with impunity, just as Barack Obama is accompanied by a muscular man in a wig. I knew that Vigano had said something like that. I didn't know it was in this statement, though. It is the reign of mystification, of falsehood, of fiction, erected as a totem in which man is disfigured precisely because he was created in the image and likeness of God. I just interject. Yeah, this goes back a very long way. There's a very old demonic symbol called Baphomet, which is a sort of goat-headed god, which is genetically, what's the word? Its gender is disfigured. It's half man, half woman. And that's what we're seeing being celebrated today. Continuing with the article. Tolerance cannot be the alibi for the systemic destruction of Christian society, a society by which billions of honest and hitherto silent people identify themselves. This prevarication must end, and it must end not so much and not only because it hurts the sensibilities of believers, but because it offends the majesty of God. Satan does not have the rights of God, evil cannot be put on the same level as good, nor can lies be equated with truth. This is what our civilization is based on, a civilization that some would like to bury under the physical and moral rubble of a world in shambles. It must be made clear that the patience and forbearance of the faithful and of citizens have been exhausted, that it is no longer time to deplore, but to act, even and especially when civil and religious authority are complicit in the betrayal. This next paragraph is in bold, so it must be especially important. It is therefore necessary for Christians to organize around the world with concrete actions, first and foremost with a boycott of the Olympic Games and all their sponsors. It is equally necessary for companies not subservient to globalism to revoke their sponsorship contracts, and for delegations and individual athletes to withdraw from the Games, which were inaugurated under the worst auspices. Yeah, that didn't occur to me. That's definitely true. We must expect and demand that those responsible for this intolerable bullying be held accountable for their actions, as well as for the corruption that also accompanies this event. Finally, the homosexual set designer who gave birth to this blasphemous and vulgar spectacle must repay the fees that Macroniads I'm not sure how that's supposed to be pronounced. It's a derivative of Macron. Macroniades, Macroniades charged French taxpayers. I urge Catholics to make reparation by prayer, fasting, and penance for the outrages perpetuated against our Lord Jesus Christ and against our holy religion. And may the confident recourse of those who are good before the throne of the Most High not be divorced from a general awakening of consciences so that the King of Kings may once more reign over nations, societies, families, and the church. So that's the end of the article. Just like to clarify, I am not Catholic, but I can what's the word? It's a good article. I'm not the most. I don't have a lot of authority, but I approve of most of what this article has to say. It's great that he encourages people to quit the Olympics if they're in it. If there are any Christians competing at the Olympics or attending the Olympics, they should get out of there. It reminds me, it might just take one or two people in order to convince the rest to leave. Just in the same way that I believe it was when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were told that they had to worship the giant statue of King Nebuchadnezzar. I believe it was Shadrach was the first one to stand up, and he said, "No, I won't do that." And then that was enough to get the other two guys to stand up and say, "Yeah, we're not going to do that either." Sometimes it just takes a very small number of people to to show other people to show everyone else what the reality is, what common sense dictates, and do the right thing. Someone else I was reading was saying that was pointing out that historic, like the ancient Olympics were quite were quite wicked as well, and it was only since the Olympics were restarted sometime in the 1900s that they were more, that they weren't as pagan. But in ancient times, there would have been a lot of very strange religious, pagan religious symbolism going on and that sort of thing. So, before getting on to the next article, I just have a quick interlude. It's a video of some African children reenacting the attempted assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And it's obvious that they're doing it because they have such respect for Donald Trump. They're not making fun of him or anything like that. And it kind of demonstrates how much respect Donald Trump has among regular people all over the world.
I want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
So I'll just describe it for anyone who's not watching, who's just listening. It's there's a bunch of little black children in Africa, and they're sort of, like I said, they're reenacting the attempted assassination on Donald Trump, and there's a little kid pumping his arm in the air like Donald Trump, shouting, "Fight, fight, fight!" And it's in some ways it's very humorous. In other ways it's really not, because the sound is, of course, the sound from the actual assassination attempt, and the screaming you hear in the background, I can only presume, is from, the people around the fellow who actually did get shot in the head, which apparently was quite gruesome. So anyway, moving on to the third item. This is an article from Anne Barnhardt, who I'm not really that familiar with. I just came across this yesterday. She seems to be a nice Catholic lady, and she has an article called "Go Clean Up the Kitchen, You Stupid, Stupid Woman." So, here we go. I have had this piece in the back of my mind for some time, and have even run the title and general gist of it past a few people, all of whose eyes sparkled like the transporter beam of the Enterprise A upon hearing it. Long, long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I lived in a large shared house built in the 1920s with a male friend. I had the master bedroom suite, and thus my own private bedroom, and everything was completely on the up and up. Fear not, gentle readers, I shall not be scandalizing you with tales of ribaldry, no accompanying body-to-body going on, to use one of Francis Church's creepier turns of phrase. It was an excellent use of the property, and very frugal and affordable, and yes, I certainly preferred to live with males, both from the security as well as a domestic tranquility standpoint. In this particular case, I did in fact greatly admire and count as a treasured friend the male housemate, and no matter what great adventure I had been on in those heady days of my youth, when my learning curve was near vertical and every day seemed an adventure, it was always a pleasure to simply go home. I have always been a bit of a foodie, and would often eat out, arriving home after the rush hour in the relatively large and well-equipped house kitchen was over for the evening. In fact, 4 out of 5 dentists surveyed would have guessed that my shelf in the refrigerator, packed with condiments, pickles, recycled glass jars of bacon drippings, and as many bottles of Corona Extra as would fit in the remaining void, was the man shelf, and they would have been wrong, but I digress. My evening ritual before turning in for the night was, in order, to go to the kitchen, wash and dry any and all dishes and cookware used that day, including the coffee pot, lift the grates off the gas stovetop, and thoroughly clean and polish the stainless steel stovetop. Clean the countertops, kitchen table, and stainless steel double basin sink, and finally replace the stove grates, and then set upon the perfectly clean stove the small saucepan for my friend to heat his milk for the next morning's coffee. Bear in mind, rarely were any of the dishes dirtied by me, as I ate out more often than not. Further, I was almost never the first in the kitchen in the morning, and was not a ritual morning coffee drinker. I cleaned the kitchen and set out the next morning's accoutrements, not for myself, but for my friend and housemate. I wanted him to start his day off not with a dirty kitchen, dishes stacked in the sink, and a grease-covered stove. The thought in the back of my mind, oh, I'm going to have to clean this kitchen after I get home from work today. No, I wanted to give him the smallest of gifts, a little help around the house. And God forgive me, that 20 minutes of quiet, nightly kitchen cleanup, in particular the polishing of the stove and setting out of the saucepan, was the best part of my day. If I were dishonest, I wouldn't say that something liturgical or some... If I were dishonest, I would say that something liturgical or some formal prayer was the best part of my day, but it wasn't. The silent, spontaneous prayer of thanksgiving that flowed out of my soul as I recalled that day's events, and how happy I was to be where I was, surrounded by friends, recalling past adventures and making plans for future adventures, and praying for my friend and housemate and his intentions, as I scrubbed grease splatter off the stove with Ajax grease, cutting spray, and paper towels. That was the best part of my day. To this day, if asked to pinpoint my zenith of personal happiness, it was nothing to do with my personal accomplishments in business, my first cattle marketing school, the opening of my brokerage firm, or even my first 6-figure month. Nor does it have to do with my reception into the church, which was more a feeling of relief than anything else. If you asked me when I felt happy, truly, truly happy, it was when I was cleaning up for a man. So roll that up real tight in your Virginia Slim cigarette and smoke it, Betty Friedman. It's almost as if there was some sort of hard wiring given to us by God, factory-loaded software, if you will, nudging us toward our gender-specific vocations that will make us truly happy. I think I'm going to have to start reading Anne Barnhardt a lot more often, maybe. One evening, as I was doing the evening tidy-up, my friend and housemate, having eaten his dinner in his room, brought his dishes into the kitchen after I had started cleaning up. I happily reached out to take his dishes to wash, as I was already standing at the sink washing dishes. He said, "No, I'll do it," and I happily replied, "No, I'm happy to do it," which, as we just covered above, was the understatement of the evening. At this, he angrily handed me the dishes, growled contemptuously, "You're so annoying," and walked out. Being human, I was certainly wounded at the revelation that the best part of my day, this small yet concrete act of charity, was a source of annoyance for my friend. But I also remembered a book I had read about the life of Saint Joseph by the mystic Maria Cecilia Beige. Beige claimed that the events of the life of St. Joseph were told to her by our Lord himself. Okay. And I found the book to be most informative and credible. In it, the Blessed Virgin is described as a meticulous housekeeper, not out of the slightest hint of personal pride, obviously, but out of pure love for our Lord and St. Joseph. Further, I was struck by the realization that our Lord, who could have miraculously cleaned the house for his mother or summoned angels to do it, let her do it. Why? Because he wanted her to be happy. A lot of speculation here. And we can only be truly happy when what we do is motivated by love, and what we are doing is proper to our state in life. She loved St. Joseph because he was one of the finest and most admirable men who has ever lived, and he was her most chaste husband, and she was his wife, ever virgin. And she loved our Lord because he is God and also her Son. She, who was full of grace and thus capable of such tremendous love, was, in keeping with her state of life in woman, wife, and mother, made truly happy in taking care of and cleaning up after her boys. After thinking on this, I resolved that I would not stop doing my evening cleanup, and I did until the very end. I still remember the last night in that house, crying and crying as I polished the stove and set the saucepan one last time. Flash forward to today, wherein one of the main focuses of my writing and lecturing is diabolical narcissism. Diabolical narcissism is the psycho-spiritual driver behind most of the cultural pathologies we see around us today. Diabolical narcissism is broadly defined as when a human being, like the fallen angels, freely chooses to purge themselves of all charity, leaving them incapable of love or empathy, and capable of only the demonic emotional palette of anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear. These people are incredibly dangerous to souls, as they, like the demons, literally hunt other human beings, attempting to murder not their bodies but their souls out of pure spite. One of the points of nexus I made early on in researching diabolical narcissism was that the subset of Marxism, commonly called feminism, is nothing less than the explicit attempt to turn women en masse into diabolical narcissists, whereas women have historically comprised less than 20% of the total of diabolical narcissists in Western populations. Feminism demands that a woman be totally selfish, and beyond that, hate men qua men. I should know what that means. Hate men qua men, hate marriage, and even hate their own children to the point of demanding the state-protected, state-financed ability to premeditatedly murder them. But where it all began was with the notion that any sort of work performed by a woman around the house was a drudgery, a waste of time, an act of patriarchal oppression, even legalized slavery. Many women today in the post-Christian West are shockingly bad housekeepers, and not just because they are working outside the home. Many stay-at-home wives and mothers are content to live in squalor, even proud of the fact that they are sticking it to the man, boasting of their refusal to clean and inability to cook. Are we surprised? As true charity is purged from every corner of our culture, replaced with a self-worshipping narcissistic humanism, is it any wonder that today's women are simply incapable of understanding how it could possibly be that cleaning the kitchen, doing the laundry, or even the most primordial of caring acts, feeding another human being, could possibly make them happy, much less fulfill them as women on this mortal coil? One of my favorite movies is 1954's Marty, starring Ernest Borgnine. A side plot of the film revolves around two widowed sisters, immigrants from Italy, living in the Bronx. One widowed sister has just moved in with her son, his new wife, and their infant child. The mother is angry and frustrated with her daughter-in-law because the mother can no longer be the sole housekeeper. While her behavior toward her daughter-in-law is selfish and wrong, she gives a moving speech to her sister, also a widow but still living in her large family home and taking care of her remaining bachelor son, Marty, about the horror of growing old and not having anyone to take care of, not having anything to do. To today's women and girls, this sentiment is incomprehensible. How could a woman complain, much less fall into a depression, because she doesn't have to clean up after anyone, doesn't have to do anyone's laundry, doesn't have to cook? In other words, how can a woman not be overjoyed at having no one to love? Goodness me, how do I hate feminism with a perfect hatred? How I do hate feminism with a perfect hatred. The lesson in all of this is to be learned to be animated in our work by the love of God, because then all of our tasks and chores that we perform for others, which the world considers menial drudgery at best and horrifically unpleasant at worst, including for perfect strangers, will yield that same happiness that comes from doing something for someone we love personally, be it a spouse, child, family member, or a friend. This is called sanctity, and is what drove the centuries of religious who took care of the sick and dying, the destitute poor, and orphans. They saw Christ in every face. Even those chores that those of us who are single and live alone do for ourselves can be done for the love of God. And yes, to this day, when I clean my own stove, I still pray. But what I wouldn't give for just one more night to clean up for my friend, because looking back at my life, that was the closest I ever came to being a normal woman, which is why I was, in retrospect, so happy. And so when I hear a woman, especially a woman with a family, complaining about housework using the standard diabolical narcissist feminist boilerplate that we can all recite, all I can think of is, "Go clean up the kitchen, you stupid, stupid woman." Well, that was a good article, I think. It's very countercultural. Yeah, that would be a lot better if society had had more women who thought that way. All right. All right, so the next item, there's a tweet I came across from Kamala HQ talking about JD Vance and trying to portray him in a bad way. So there's a video of Charlie Vance on the Charlie Kirk Show, and the caption from Kamala HQ is, JD Vance says adults without children should have their taxes raised because we should punish the things we think are bad. And it's the first, like, immediately when I read that yesterday for the first time, I knew that was a lie. I knew that was probably almost certainly being phrased in a dishonest manner, because it's just so stupid that no one could would have possibly said that. I mean, it's like raising the taxes on people without children. It's obvious JD Vance didn't say that. So let's take a look at what he actually did say.
That problem.
I think it's simple, and I'll go back to something I said earlier about we need to reward the things that we think are good and punish the things that we think are bad. So you talk about tax policy. Let's tax the things that are bad and not tax the things that are good. If you're making $100,000, $400,000 a year, and you've got 3 kids, you should pay a different, lower tax rate than if you're making the same amount of money and you don't have any kids. It's that simple.
I totally agree with that problem.
I think it's simple.
Yeah, so what he actually said was that people with children should pay lower taxes. They should be given tax incentives to have more children. This is something that has been implemented in other countries. I'm sorry, I can't remember precisely what countries they are. There's at least one country in Europe where they started doing that, and the native-born population has immediately began to grow. And it sounds like a good thing to me. Here we have another tweet. This one's from someone named Pat Reinard. I don't know who that is. I'm not sure which side of the fence he's on. But he says, JD Vance says Americans without children should face the consequences and the reality and not get nearly the same voice in democracy. Vance says, let's give votes to all children in this country, but let's give control over those votes to the parents of those children.
Let's give votes to all children in this country, but let's give control over those votes to the parents of those children. When you go to the polls in this country as a parent, you should have more power. You should have more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids. Let's face the consequences and the reality. If you don't have as much of an investment in the future of this country, maybe you shouldn't get nearly the same voice. Now, let's get...
So, I think you can tell from some of the laughter in the background there that he's not being entirely serious. Obviously, that's probably not something that would ever happen, that they would give votes to children, but just give control of those votes to the parents. That is kind of silly sounding, but there is a principle there which is correct, which is that if that people who have children have demonstrated that they have reason to plan for the future, whereas someone who doesn't have children, not necessarily, but that's more of an indication that they might be lacking in more, that they might be more self-centered. So it would hypothetically be one way of tilting the balance of the vote toward people who are more likely to be to care about other people rather than to be self-centered. I think anyway. It's possible that the entire, I've sometimes thought that voting should be that I don't like democracy. That's what I was trying to say at all. I think there are better ways of ruling a country. And that led me to this article from NPR about, I think, is that National Public Radio? But anyway, this is an article by someone named Rachel Treisman, which is a very interesting name. Treisman. It's a very noticeable name. The title is JD Vance went viral for cat lady comment. The centuries-old trope has a long tail. And this is... I'm not sure I've ever read NPR before, but I skimmed through this article earlier, and it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. It's so incredibly long, just giving the history of the cat lady trope, and it's like, we don't need all of this information about the cat lady trope. What do you think you're doing? Is this like a college treatise or something, trying to make a huge deal about something that's not that complicated? Anyway, I'm going to start reading through this and commenting as I go through, because it's just so hilarious. Republican Vice President nominee Senator JD Vance's criticism of prominent... Oh, just a moment, I gotta... Roscoe says, I'm totally for only married men with children having the vote. Yes, I would... I would agree with that. Roscoe also says voting is dumb. Yes. A Republican Vice President nominee Senator JD Vance's criticism of prominent Democrats as childless cat ladies has unleashed fury. It's unleashed fury among women, with many now reclaiming the age-old sexist trope as a call to action this election season. In a 2021 interview with Fox News host Tucker Carlson, oh man, 2021, real up-to-date news there, then Senate candidate Vance complained that the U.S. was being run by Democrats, corporate oligarchs, and a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. Man, I wish it were that simple, but there's a great deal of truth to that. It's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children, Vance continued. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a stake in it? Oh boy. Is there a law that the president has to have children? I mean, that's one thing there should be. At least the president should have to have children, I think. Video of the interview resurfaced on social media last week, as did an unrelated 2021 tweet in which Vance used the term weird cat ladies as an insult. Vance was already facing scrutiny as former President Donald Trump's newly minted running mate, in part for his stance on various family policies. He has called falling U.S. birth rates a civilizational crisis, which it is, and advocated in recent years that adults without children should pay higher taxes and have fewer voting rights. I'm just going to interject here. I was listening to Andrew Wilson recently, and he was pointing out that secular humanism, or non-religious people, don't have any particular reason to have children. At least that's what the statistics point out. There's no, like, if you can engage in the recreational activity of sex without having the consequences, and you don't believe in, like, if you're not religious, there is no reason why. There's less of a reason why you'd want to have children if you could just get the recreational benefits without the responsibilities. And so that's probably the reason why the statistics indicate that non-religious people have very few children compared to religious people. Continuing with the article from NPR, and his cat lady comments, amplified online by Vice President Harris's presidential campaign, did not land well, to say the least. Well, landed well with me. I'm not sure what they're talking about. First, many took issue with the accuracy of his comments. Harris is the stepmother of 2 children, now in their 20s, who famously call her Mamala. Okay, so now we begin a long list of but nuh-uh statements. Stepmother. Not a mother, a stepmother. I mean, nothing wrong with being a stepmother, I guess. Their biological mother, Kirsten Emhoff, has publicly decried the baseless attacks and credited Harris for being a loving, nurturing, fiercely protective, and always present co-parent over the past decade. Ella Emhoff, one of Emhoff's daughters, also defended her stepmom in a post on social media, writing, "I love my 3 parents." Sounds like a normal family. And Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, whom Vance also name-checked, announced a month after that interview that he and his husband Chasen had become parents to twins we later earned. Okay, now that is really off there. Yeah. A homosexual couple have adopted a child, and man, that is horrendous. Buttigieg told CNN last week that Vance had made those comments after Chasen and I had been through a fairly heartbreaking setback in our adoption journey. If he couldn't have known that, he added, but maybe that's why you shouldn't be talking about other people's children. Man. Orozco says, wait, Harris is a stepmother? That's incredible. Yes, it is. Goodness, she should star in a Cinderella remake. Yeah, as the evil stepmother. Fetch the ruby slippers. Well, in her case, yeah, I don't know. Vance doubled down after backlash from both sides of the aisle. Good for him. That sentiment was shared by many. Okay, I say that as someone who likes cats. Okay, I approve of this message from JD Vance, even though I'm someone who likes cats. I'm not a cat lady, obviously, as you can tell from my voice, my very masculine voice. But yeah, I don't have a cat since I'm allergic. But whenever I visit the barn, I like saying hello to the cats. That sentiment was shared by many who were stung by Vance's comments, including in the world of politics and entertainment. Critics include former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the murderer, actor Whoopi Goldberg, who famously just announced that she, in solidarity with Joe Biden, has terrible poop days. Oh man. And TV personality Meghan McCain, who tweeted that Vance's comments caused real pain and have been activating women across all sides, including my most conservative Trump supporting friends. Oh sure. Even some conservative figures like South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham and Fox News host Trey Gowdy have publicly shaded Vance's remarks. Intended targets aside, many critics see the cat lady term as an insult to the growing number of women who don't have kids, whether by choice or not. Well, it kind of is. On purpose. Gun control activist and former representative Gabby Cliffords, who survived an assassination attempt in 2011, tweeted that she and her husband, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, whose name has been floated as a potential VP candidate, were trying to have a baby through IVF, in vitro fertilization, before I was shot and that dream was stolen from us. To suggest we are somehow lesser is disgraceful, Giffords added. Well, come on, that is obviously not anything that JD Vance would not say that. That is ridiculous. JD Vance, I'm sure, would be very sad that Giffords was not able to conceive children, obviously. Actress Jennifer Aniston, who has spoken about her own fertility struggles, wrote on social media that she hopes Vance's daughter is lucky enough to bear children one day. Oh, thanks. I hope she will not need to turn to IVF as a second option, Aniston wrote, because you are trying to take that away from her too. I wasn't aware of that. Is anyone trying to get rid of IVF in the United States? I wasn't aware of that. I don't know, Catholics might have a problem with IVF, but the majority of American Christians do not, as far as I know. Doesn't seem to be any further information about that. That might be an instance of Aniston just making things up, like how Bill Nye just makes stuff up about Christians sometimes. Vance slammed Aniston's remarks in an appearance on the Megyn Kelly show on Sirius XM on Friday, saying they were disgusting because my daughter is 2 years old, and even if she did have fertility problems down the road, I would try everything I could try to help her because I believe families and babies are a good thing. Vance defended his comments on Kelly's show, saying he was not criticizing people who don't have children, but rather the Democratic Party for being anti-family and anti-child. Well, that's certainly true. If you pay attention, the Democratic Party appears to be the party of death and the destruction of Western civilization. Mama Grizzly says, cats and wine, yes. Roscoe says, hey, look, it's an oppressed woman with children. Yeah. Let's see, where was I? Vance's comments... What was it? Oh, I was going to say something. Yeah, I mean, my own thoughts on this matter are that, like, not having children doesn't necessarily indicate a lack of moral character, but when you have large numbers of people who aren't reproducing, that is definitely indicative of probably a lack of moral character on the part of someone. I wouldn't go around pointing the finger anywhere, but yeah, there's a lack of moral character somewhere going on there. Vance's comments are likely to alienate single women who make up a sizable portion of the population and a key voting bloc. 63% of unmarried women voted for President Biden in 2022. Oh no, that's why women shouldn't vote. And that's not to mention the millions of cat owners across the country. Oh boy. Comedian Chelsea Handler, who does not have children, noted in a video response that even the nation's founding president, George Washington, didn't have any biological kids. He also raised 2 stepchildren. Oh yes. Yes, very significant. Yes. I'd like to remind you that no president in the history of the United States has ever been a mother, Handler added. Oh. It never occurred to me. She vowed that all us childless cat and dog ladies are going to go from childless and crushing it to childless and crushing you in November. Well, that's possible, but if they do, it'll be because of election meddling. Other social users were quick to note that one of the world's most famous self-described cat ladies, Taylor Swift, Yes, a veritable paragon of virtue, wields a ton of influence among the voting public, and has yet to endorse a 2024 candidate. The long tail of the cat lady trope explained. Man, this article just goes on and on. Vance is far from the first person to invoke the trope of the child of the crazy cat lady. The insult has literally been leveled against childless women for centuries. We know that ancient Egyptians appreciated cats as a source of companionship, including in the afterlife, and associated them with deities, most famously in the case of the feline goddess Bastet. Someone's been looking cats up on Wikipedia. But cats' reputation soured in the Middle Ages as they were increasingly linked to paganism and witchcraft. While many Europeans kept cats as pets, many others came to see them as sinister, perhaps due to their handling of mice, especially at night. I don't know where that came from. Well, I'm pretty sure Europeans would be quite happy with cats killing mice, but I don't know. 12th century accounts offer descriptions of the devil transforming into a black cat and of heretical religious groups worshipping cats. People increasingly came to believe that witches, in particular women, had the ability to shapeshift into cats or used them and other animal familiars to do their bidding. Well, that might be true. I mean, apparently there's parts of the world today where people believe witches can turn into owls, so that's probably true that people used to believe that. I'm not sure what I think about that. I think, I don't know. I've never seen it. I've never heard of it happening either. Alice Kittelier, who the first person condemned for witchcraft in Ireland, was accused during her 1324 trial of possessing an incubus that looked like a black cat. Well, she might have been right about that. Agnes Waterhouse, believed to be the first Englishwoman executed for witchcraft in 1566, confessed that she had directed her pet cat, apparently named Satan, to kill local livestock. Roscoe says, "We was Bastidites," yes. Imagine identifying with witches as this article. Oh, it just went there, yeah. People have been watching too much television, too much that show Salem and Sabrina and maybe Supernatural, I don't know. The negative association with cats migrated to colonial America, where black cats were a feature of late 17th century Salem witch trials, but gradually in their wake, the trope took on a somewhat softer tone. In the early 18th century, as the witch trials were widely recognized as a grave miscarriage of justice, single women with cats were suddenly transformed in the public eye from frightening fiends to figures to be pitied. Well, yeah, I've been thinking about that for a while now, if the witch trials were a grave miscarriage of justice, because, I mean, there were people who were, I mean, there were witches, there's witches today, and I'm sure there were witches then, and, like, the evidence that there were witches in Salem, I mean, there were witches in Salem. I don't know what else to say about that. I'm not sure that there's any evidence that any of the women who were punished were unfairly punished, but yeah, I don't know. The trope of the single woman and her association with cats really took off during the Victorian era. In Scotland, an 1880 edition of the Dundee Courier declared that the old maid would not be typical of her class without the cat, and that one cannot exist without the other, according to the BBC. There is nothing at all surprising in the old maid choosing a cat as a household pet or companion, the newspaper suggested. Solitude is not congenial to human nature, and a poor forlorn female shut up in a cheerless garret, brooding all alone over her blighted hopes, would naturally center her affections on some of the lower animals, and none could be more congenial as a pet and companion than a kindly purring pussy. 1 year later, in the U.S., Hart Eirolt wrote in Potter's American Monthly, describing unmarried women as having failed in the prime object of existence. That tradition associates her with cats and parrots, on which she is supposed to lavish all that is left of affection in her withered heart. Well, that's not the most, what's the word, compassionate way of saying that, but I would imagine that Hart Eiralt might be speaking from his own personal experience, so maybe has reason to say that. A few decades later, as women began mobilizing to win the right to vote, oh no, both in the US and the UK, they found cats used against them once again. Cats, coded as passive and associated with the home, as opposed to more active masculine dogs, became a symbol of anti-suffragist propaganda. Many cartoons showed men at home with kids and a cat, emasculated by women's newfound ability to participate in politics. Well, that's exactly what happened. I mean, not everyone has a cat, but men were certainly emasculated. A lot of men, anyway. But some suffragists... Oh, I should... Right. Large numbers of emasculated men, obviously, not in women's best interests. Yeah. But some suffragists, undeterred, sought to reclaim the cat. In April 1916, Nell Richardson and Alice Burke embarked on a 10,000-mile road trip from New York to San Francisco. They drove their two-seater Golden Flyer across the country to advocate for women's right to vote and adopted a black cat along the way. How does any of this have to do with JD Vance? The little black kitten is suffering as much as we are from the heat, but he keeps under a cover, and all we can see around the corner of it is a pink nose and a youthful whisker, Burke wrote in her diary that spring, according to the National Park Service. The cat, named Saxon after the manufacturer of their car, became their unofficial mascot, and still stands as a symbol of suffrage. The city of Mesquite, Nevada, has held an annual Saxon the Suffrage Cat art contest for the last several years. The cat lady stereotype has persisted, too, further memorialized in mainstream popular culture with portrayals like the reclusive subjects of the 1975 documentary Grey Gardens. Sigourney Weaver's character... Sigourney Weaver's character in Alien, which many social media users have invoked in recent days. Sorry, I'm laughing. No one in the history of ever has referred to Sigourney Weaver as a cat lady. No one in the history of ever has ever referred to Amanda Ripley as a cat lady. Like, she has a daughter and she has game. If you ever watched the movies, particularly the second one, yeah, she has game. She's not exactly a cat lady. Eleanor Abernathy on The Simpsons and the humorless cat-loving Angela on The Office. But just like a century ago, feminists have increasingly sought to reclaim the title as their own. There's plenty of cat lady-themed merchandise online, and now some of it is Get Out the Vote themed. Oh, yes. Yes. JD Vance contributing to a ancient tradition of evil comments about cat ladies, yes. Okay. All right. Let's see, what else have I got here? Oh yes, this is not so much political news. This is just something very cool that I found from a channel called Mike Shake, and he successfully created a supersonic Nerf gun. I can't play the whole thing, but I'm going to play some sections from it. I'm just going to skip through it, I think.
Put the numeric components on top of the stock. Following my drawings, everything should fit perfectly. Following my drawings, everything should fit perfectly. As expected. Now, to keep all the numeric stuff in place, I'm using these clamps that go through the entire stock.
Yeah, I find this very, very cool. He even got a 3D printer and printed out some casing pieces for it.
Repaint, and then finishing everything with a weathering effect. And I don't want to be dramatic, I just want to be honest. And I like this dramatic song, so... Listen, I've been very stressed out in the past 2 months. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I probably didn't stop working on this once, besides when I was sleeping. But seeing how it turned out, I think it was worth it.
Yeah, that is so cool. He had to try to figure out how to get it to shoot subsonically, because he was he'd primed the air canisters, and he was using a device to test how fast it was shooting, and it wasn't supersonic. But eventually he discovered that by lowering the pressure, he could actually achieve supersonic speeds.
Understand what's happening, and it was 975 though, which is like shooting at a low.
The butcher, he's here.
Let me skip through this advertisement. Knowing advertisements, let's see here.
240 psi. I think the dart stayed in one piece, and the damage on the board was definitely higher. But the chronograph didn't read the speed. Now though, I'm gonna try to measure the speed with next episode using modified darts. But then the next day, something happened. I forgot to film a shot for the intro and a few others, so I went back to the field with my phone and the ultra slow motion camera, using the configuration with the tank below the barrel. And this time, when I shot, this happened. That was a supersonic boom. That was a super...
He could tell immediately when he fired that it sounded different, and he had exceeded the sound barrier. But yeah, creating a supersonic Nerf gun, that's pretty cool. All right, let me check my notes here. I have... Oh yeah, I was going to mention this. So this is going on in Canada now. Our Indian and Sikh immigrants are refusing to use the bathroom. They're just going off the spot. I found a video of some Indian guy saying, this is only like 5% of these immigrants, and like the old Indian immigrants, you know, they're sophisticated, but you know, they're educated and sophisticated. They'd never do anything like this. But these new immigrants, you know, they're from the lower classes, and you know, it's just 5% of them are making them all look bad. And I thought, well, that's probably true, but another aspect of it is like, you know, if you only have a small number of immigrants from a certain place in your country, then they feel a compulsion to assimilate. And so I'm sure that if this guy was like only one of a very small number of immigrants in Canada, they would get punished enough for this sort of behavior that they would very quickly learn not to do this sort of thing. But when you start having huge numbers of immigrants from someplace, of course you're going to get this sort of thing happening, and you know, there isn't going to be enough of a public outcry about it to prevent them from doing it. So that's one of the problems with mass immigration. Let me see here. Oh yes, here's a video I found on TikTok of a crazy lady. I'll just play this.
I don't talk about politics much on here because I'm not that educated and I just feel like I'm in an echo chamber. But I'm going to say this. And this is going to be my mentality moving forward after the news today. America now has the opportunity to vote in the first woman of color to be our president. And if you think I will not be first in line to support that happening, you are dead wrong. This is a groundbreaking opportunity. This is an amazing chance to show the world who we are, who we have always been. We are the land of opportunity. We are the land where you get to be who you are no matter where you come from. Yes, I know oppression exists. Of course, racism, bigotry, xenophobia, oppression, all those things are still alive and well in this country.
She says that like it's a bad thing.
country. But I promise you, you can look at other countries in this world, and this is where we have a leg up. And that is something I have to remember on a daily basis when I get so frustrated with this place, when I want to pull my hair out living as a blue dot in a red ocean of Tennessee. When I worry every day about the safety of my transgender daughter, when I worry about the safety of my children in public school, where I worry about gun violence and can they even read books and what, like, the safety, like, just all of it. I get.
Oh man, like it's hard to know what to even say to this insanity. Like everything she's saying is wrong, and she doesn't know it. She's living in a delusion bubble.
Get neurotic over it, and it makes me insane. But at the end of the day, despite what these people in Washington and Nashville and whatever your capital city is, or even your city or your county government or your school board or whoever it is, what we have to remember is that, yes, we elect them to do a job, but ultimately we are a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. And if that means we get the opportunity to put into office in the most powerful position in the...
Yeah, put into office a woman whose IQ is probably at the highest, probably 80. Like that's what she comes across as. Kamala Harris comes across as having an IQ of about 80. Yeah, I mean that'll save us all. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Land, a strong, intelligent, qualified.
Intelligent, yes. The woman who is almost definitely a former prostitute. Yeah.
Woman of color to be our champion. I am the first in line to cast my vote for her. I don't care who her running mate is. It can be a ham sandwich. It can be a white man. It can be a white woman. It can be a black woman. It can be a gay man. It can be a transgender woman.
Roscoe says, yeah, that's the thing. Hillary is actually smart, yes. But Kamala, no. Kamala. It's amazing that Kamala can even tie her own shoes.
I don't care who it is. I do not care. I know she's qualified. I know she's educated. I know the people she will put in her cabinet and administration will be the right people for this country that meet our values. That want.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like. What I keep hearing from some people is that from the way the Democrats are acting, they know that Kamala is going to win because they're going to engage in like ballot box stuffing and that sort of thing, and that's horrifying, to say the least.
To move our country forward, that want to protect our children and educate our children.
Protect their children, but through having transsexual reading days and that sort of thing. Yeah.
That want to keep us safe from outside sources, that want to keep our economy moving in the right direction, that want a strong working force, that want our climate to be under control.
Working force? Well, that's ridiculous. Like you give women like this power, and you put them in the workforce. That just makes men want to stay home and work, and men do the most of the work anyway. And the women the sort of work that the women stick to is mostly like office stuff and retail and that sort of thing, not actual like infrastructure stuff that actually keeps the lights on and that sort of thing.
All of those things. I know she shares our values. I don't give a shit if I agree with her on everything. I don't give a shit about any of that stuff because I'm never going to agree with anybody 100% of the time. That's not a thing.
Wow, so magnanimous.
But I will be first in line to vote for Kamala Harris and whoever is her running mate. And I am thrilled to be given
Satan? Is Satan her running mate?
this opportunity. I am thrilled. I've cast my vote for the first potential woman president in 2016. I cast my vote for Elizabeth Warren in 2020. I've cast my vote for Joe Biden in the general, and I will vote for Kamala Harris every chance I get. I love Joe Biden. He is an amazing man. He has
Sniff, sniff, sniff.
led our country through hell. It has been hell
Doesn't pass the sniff test.
for 4 years. He was left with such a mess. Everything is a disaster. All of it. And he has done the very best job he can because he puts the best people around him. He is not followed by a bunch of
The best people around him. I saw an interview with, I think it was Joe Biden's financial advisor a while ago, and he was talking about how, the government can never run out of money because they can always just print more. And so someone asked him, well, that begs the question, why are we borrowing all this money from China? And he just suddenly had this blank look in his face. He's like, oh, wait a minute. What in the world am I talking about? And that's the sort of people whom Biden surrounds himself with, or at least the people whom Biden's handlers surround him with. Complete ignoramuses.
yes men and yes women and criminals and crooks and people. None of that. He has done an amazing job, and I tip my hat to him. He is in my heart. This man has served this country for his entire career. He has served this country
Him and several body doubles.
through loss, through sacrifice, through things that I'd be under the house. I would be under the house, and yet he kept going and kept going. And I cannot
Under the house like Igor the Hunchback?
imagine the grief and the difficulty that he is experiencing to make this decision. But that shows you that he is not about ego. This is not about power. This is about what is best for this nation. And he is throwing his hat in the ring behind Kamala Harris. And I believe in him, and I believe in her. And what an opportunity.
I believe in Kamala. I believe in Biden. I believe in the power of the state to make the world a better place. Yes, yes. Say amen, brothers.
Blessing. What a blessing we have in front of us. So I know we are all freaking out. I know it is like July 20th. I know this election will be here before we know it. But guys, it's not over. It is not over. We've got time. We can do this. We know what we are up against. We have the upper hand here. They have shown their cards. We know what they want to do. We know what they're capable of. We know who they will put in those offices around them. And we have the opportunity to say, not only is this not okay, but we're going to go above and beyond what you ever thought was possible. So everybody take a breath. Take a deep, deep breath. Process through the way you're feeling right now. This is crazy times. We live in nothing but crazy times. We don't have boring times anymore. And we are blessed for that. We are blessed to see that we have the power.
What? I'm pretty sure that traditionally living through interesting times is not a good thing. That's what the old proverb says anyway.
To change and change and change, and to break the status quo, and to do things differently in ways that they've never been done before. We do that every day in this nation, and this is our greatest opportunity. So let's do this. Let's do this. Go behind her, support her, scream it from the rooftops. This is an amazing opportunity. She does not decide everything. The president does not decide everything. She is going to fill her cabinet with people that can do what we want to do. If you are on
Oh, okay.
This thought process, if this is where your beliefs lie on the liberal democratic point of view, this is it. This is great. This is an amazing opportunity. Don't get caught up in all the nonsense and all the bullshit and all the drama. This is a chance for us to shine on a global scale. Guys, let's do this. Let's do this. I'm in it to win it. Kamala.
Oh man, I can't listen to any more of that. I heard someone recently talking about why women shouldn't be allowed to vote, why women shouldn't be allowed in politics. And it was an interesting take I'd never heard before. It had something to do with politics was invented as an alternative to warfare, and warfare is obviously the province of men. So you engage in politics so that you don't have to go out and kill other people. And it's kind of a compromise because the winners are not going to win as much as they would through war, and also the losers are not going to lose as much as they would in war, and consequently it's judged to be better for everyone to engage in, on a whole, collectively, over a extended period of time if you engage in politics rather than war. And yeah, since politics was created as in lieu of war, that's why men were supposed to engage in politics and not women, because you don't send women to war, in the same way you don't send women to government. And yeah, it's just as true today as it ever was. And one of the reasons that women are not involved in war, or shouldn't be involved in war, is because women's skill set doesn't lend itself toward that. You have to be able to think about. You have to your thought processes have to be more outward facing. You have to be able to consider like the consequences that come to the group rather than just to yourself. And this is that's not the way that God made women. Women tend to be more solipsistic. That is, their thoughts tend to be more, well, how does this affect me? And not so much, well, how will this affect my family? How will this affect, society at large, and that sort of thing. And so when women do get involved in politics today, just as much as in any other period of history, it often results in there being war. Like statistically, female politicians have started a lot more wars than men have, and I think it's quite obvious that one of the reasons for that is because women are more solipsistic. They don't think about long-term consequences and that sort of thing. All right, and now for the final item. There's this meme that I came across. There's a woman holding a glass of beer, and she says, "Cheers to all the people who can change their minds when presented with information that contradicts their beliefs." And And the thought I had on this was, well, it occurred to me if I could identify if I've ever done that. Have I ever changed my mind when presented with information that contradicted my opinions? And to be perfectly honest, I can think of 2 different situations that I've been in. And a lot of the time when I've changed my mind, it was because my alpha or a situational alpha told me that what I was saying was incorrect. And although it was very unpleasant, I had to, because I had respect for the alpha, I had to reconsider my opinions. And eventually I came to the conclusion that he was right. And so that's, that wasn't entirely just because I was presented with new information. It was because, an authority figure, an alpha whom I respected, told me that I was wrong about something. And the other example I can think of when I've changed my mind, it was because one of my peers started making fun of me for something that I believed in. And that was also unpleasant. But when I had to sit back and think about it and try to think about it from his perspective, and I realized that he was probably more right than I was. There was some nuance to it, I think, but he was more in the right than I was. And so, I think that for most people, that's probably that's probably the most likely thing to happen. They'll have an authority figure tell them that they're wrong, and that will inspire them to go look into different information. Now, of course, I had different situational alphas telling me opposite things, and so it's not as if I just do whatever my alpha says. It's because I have different circles of my life and different alphas in those circles, and some of them have very, very different opinions, and sometimes I have to go with the one who has less of a direct effect on my person on me, because I think that the less significant one is actually correct. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. It's a personal anecdote. I don't know how interesting that is to anyone, but yeah, so that's it. Okay, so I think that's it for the evening. Thank you to Roscoe and Mama Grizzly and anyone else who dropped by, and also thanks to anyone who was watching this from the future. This is ArtGainz. This is ArtGainz Live number 3. And I'm trying to think of a catchphrase for this show. I'm thinking something like ArtGainz Live, your ultimate source for Christian nationalist infotainment and commentary, or something like that. And I have to figure out when the best time to stream is, when I'm most likely to get views and that sort of thing. Oh yes, and one other thing I'd like to point out is that there is a whole spectrum of things which I would really like to talk about, which you just can't talk about on YouTube because it's too politically incorrect and you'd probably get kicked off. And it's like, that is quite frustrating. There's things I like to talk about, like Jewish theology and the Talmud and stuff like that, but you can't talk about that kind of stuff on YouTube without, probably getting into a lot of trouble if anyone, takes notice of it. So, yeah, all I can do is I can say is that if you want to find out that sort of information, or at least find a community of people who are talking about stuff which is possibly more significant than anything I can talk about here on YouTube, you might want to get an account on Gab, because there's a lot of gobbledygook on Gab, but there is at least you're allowed to talk about certain things on Gab which you're not allowed to talk about anywhere else. All right. So once again, this is ArtGainz. Thanks for watching.